When a self-proclaimed no-touch master stepped into the ring claiming he could knock out opponents with invisible energy and mystical powers, what happened next exposed one of the most embarrassing moments in martial arts history. Within seconds, reality delivered a crushing blow that shattered years of delusion and left his students questioning everything they'd been taught. But he's not alone. Across the globe, fake martial arts masters have been brutally exposed when their ancient, deadly techniques met modern combat sports, and the results are absolutely devastating. Welcome back to Fight Legends Unleashed, where we expose the most shocking truths in combat sport. Traditional Chinese Kung Fu has captivated the world for decades through movies and mystical legends. But what happens when these masters step into real combat? The answer is nothing short of catastrophic. In one of the most shocking exposures ever captured on camera, a traditional Chinese Kung Fu master challenged a professional MMA fighter, convinced that his ancient techniques would prove superior to modern combat sports. What followed was a masterclass in delusion meeting reality. From the opening seconds, the MMA fighter wasted no time exposing the master's complete lack of defensive skills. Charging forward with relentless aggression, he landed heavy punches while the master frantically tried to dodge, his elegant forms completely useless under real pressure. The master's centuries-old techniques, designed for demonstration and theory, crumbled instantly against basic boxing combinations. His attempts to maintain distance and execute traditional stances were overwhelmed by the fighter's forward pressure and superior conditioning. When the master finally attempted to fight back, the reality became even more brutal. His counterattacks were slow, telegraphed, and completely ineffective against someone trained in modern combat sports. The MMA fighter wasn't just winning, he was treating the master like a human punching bag. A devastating punch forced the master back onto the ropes, and though he managed to stay on his feet initially, his face absorbed punishment like he was made of nothing but flesh and false confidence. Then came the moment that perfectly encapsulated the gap between fantasy and reality. The MMA fighter stepped forward and delivered a perfect kick directly to the master's face, sending him crashing to the ground. The technique was textbook modern martial arts. No mystical energy, no ancient secrets, just proper timing, distance, and devastating power. The final humiliation came when the MMA fighter, clearly fed up with the charade, ended the embarrassment with a crisp left hook that dropped the master permanently. It wasn't just a knockout, it was the complete destruction of years of self-deception and fraudulent teaching. In his most famous encounter, Xiaodong faced another traditional master who had built his reputation on theoretical knowledge and compliant students. The fight lasted less than 60 seconds, but those seconds contained years of accumulated delusion being violently corrected. Xiaodong charged immediately, understanding that allowing fake masters to set their pace or demonstrate their techniques only prolongs the inevitable. His opening barrage of punches overwhelmed the master's defenses instantly, sending him crashing to the ground, where the real punishment began. What followed was a ground and pound session that resembled nothing so much as an adult disciplining a child who had been lying about their abilities. Xiaodong's punches weren't just about winning, they were about exposing the fraud for what it was, ensuring that no future students would be deceived by empty promises in theatrical demonstrations. From the opening exchange, the master's aggression seemed promising. He charged forward with typical Wing Chun enthusiasm, believing his rapid-fire hand techniques would overwhelm his MMA opponent. What he received instead was a violent education on the difference between theory and application. The MMA fighter's response was immediate and devastating. Back-to-back kicks and punches to the face demonstrated that while Wing Chun focuses on hand techniques, modern fighters train in all ranges of combat. The master's aggressive approach, which might intimidate students in a controlled environment, only made him an easier target for someone with real fighting experience. The finishing sequence was a textbook example of modern martial arts superiority. The MMA fighter first attacked the master's mobility with a left kick to the thigh, compromising his stance and balance. Then in one fluid motion, he delivered a right kick directly to the master's head that sent him crashing to the ground unconscious. This particular master had spent years convincing himself and his students that he possessed supernatural abilities. His confidence was absolute as he sat across from his opponent, genuinely believing that his mystical powers would render physical combat unnecessary. The master's attempts to harness energy from his surroundings were met with the most basic reality check possible: heavy punches to the face. His mystical gestures and focused concentration were utterly worthless against someone willing to simply hit him repeatedly. What made this encounter particularly devastating was the master's persistence. Even after the first barrage of punches shattered his delusions, he insisted on trying his powers again. The second attempt ended with even heavier punishment, finally knocking him unconscious and proving that the only supernatural power in the ring was his ability to ignore obvious reality. One MMA professional, drunk on his own success against fake masters, made the catastrophic mistake of challenging a genuine Shaolin monk. His assumption that all traditional martial artists were frauds was about to be corrected in the most violent way possible. The monk's response was immediate and absolute. Within seconds, he delivered a perfect kick to the fighter's abdomen, demonstrating the difference between theatrical martial arts and authentic training. The technique was precise, powerful, and delivered with the kind of timing that only comes from years of legitimate practice. One Tai Chi master, convinced that his years of slow-motion practice had prepared him for real fighting, challenged an MMA fighter in what he believed would be a demonstration of his art's effectiveness. From the opening seconds, the master's attempts to apply Tai Chi principles were overwhelmed by basic aggression and superior conditioning. The finishing sequence was particularly brutal. The MMA fighter cornered the master against the cage and unleashed a barrage of punches that the Tai Chi practitioner had no tools to handle. The knockout punch was almost anticlimactic, a simple left hook to the body that dropped the master permanently. Years of believing in Tai Chi's martial applications were destroyed in seconds, leaving behind only the harsh reality that slow-motion movements cannot prepare someone for real combat. Sometimes fake masters don't need opponents to expose their fraudulent abilities. They humiliate themselves in the most spectacular fashion possible. Britain's Got Talent witnessed one of the most embarrassing moments in martial arts history when a karate master's demonstration went catastrophically wrong. This particular master had built his reputation on breaking objects with his body, convincing audiences that his conditioning made him superhuman. His students dutifully broke boards across his arms, reinforcing the illusion of his incredible toughness and martial arts mastery. Riding high on adrenaline and audience approval, the master decided to escalate his demonstration. He called for multiple slabs to be brought to him, intending to break them with his head in a display of ultimate martial arts conditioning. What happened next defied all expectations. Instead of demonstrating superhuman toughness, the master knocked himself unconscious, attempting to break the boards with his head. He fell from the table, crashed to the ground, and lay motionless while the audience sat in shocked silence. The self-knockout was more than just a failed demonstration. It was a perfect metaphor for the entire fake martial arts phenomenon. Years of believing in his own mythology, surrounded by compliant students and controlled environments, had convinced the master that he possessed abilities he simply didn't have. What's your take on these devastating exposures? Do you think traditional martial arts can compete with modern training methods? Or are these encounters proof that ancient techniques belong in museums rather than fighting arenas? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive analysis of combat sports' most controversial moments.